Jesus was running a sex cult. We're starting off hot today at the TheDnazChannel. That's right. We are going to talk about evil sex cults. That's what we're going into. And we don't have to start right with Jesus, friends. We don't. We can get into Jesus. So, where should we start? We should start back in antiquity, way before Jesus, right? We should start with the old fertility goddess and where the sex cults come from. Because you have to remember, there's a huge lie that women were always oppressed. That is not a thing. Women were worshipped for a very long time until the Abrahamic religions came in, and then they started oppressing women and blah, blah, blah. Okay. But before them, women were worshipped and they were at the top of society. They were at the top. Okay. Women were ruling. Okay. Look at Cleopatra, things like that. And we were worshiping the woman because we were worshiping fertility goddesses. You can even look up figurines that were, you go back over 40,000 years, like very old figurines of Venus and carvings of women, like, robust carvings of women's bodies. And, they were fertility goddesses. Okay. So I know that's not really a sex cult, but I'm just bringing you back. I'm taking you into the time machine and bringing you back to the day and age where what they were doing, right? Because this antiquity was very spiritual, okay? And they were always doing rituals. There was a lot of rituals, okay? And it's funny because the Christians and Catholics, they don't like to believe. They like to say that magic is all like hoo-ha. They're doing magic all the time. They're performing rituals. That's what they are doing. They are doing this magic, okay? And that we have thousands of texts in ancient Greek because, mind you, the Bible was in Greek. I have a book right here to show you, okay? The Western Dictionary of the New Testament, okay? And it will show you everything in Greek. It will show you the words in Greek of the Bible because the original Bible was the Septuagint, people. Now, we have plenty of documents like the Greek magical papyri, all these different documents of all these different potions and drinks and substances that they were using. They were using substances to give a psychedelic, for lack of a better word, experience, okay? And these drugs turned into what they were using for cults, okay? So they were creating cults because somebody had these drugs and other people didn't necessarily understand what they were. So when they were going around fumigating people, like the churches, how they all like incense and stuff like this back in the day, like Jesus, when he was born, he was brought in frankincense and myrrh and gold by the Magi, right? Fumigation was huge. They were throwing these old parties like where we got Christmas from, the Hilaria. It's like a old Hellenistic festival, right? That was to celebrate the winter solstice and all that, like, the coming of a new year, blah, blah, blah. And this is when they made the whole lie that Christmas was Jesus's birthday. No, it's not. Okay. So this is the Hilaria. But they were fumigating people. They were going through towns. When you went to an oracle, if you heard of the old oracles, these oracles, there's paintings. You'll see a painting of an oracle sitting on a tripod, and above the tripod she has fumes coming up because they were fumigating. They were getting high on these different plants and substances, and that was giving them vision. So the oracle will get visions from these psychedelic experiences, and those were the words of the gods, okay? Just as we're experimenting with DMT today and going into the different realms, and people are seeing things and seeing different beings and getting information, this was going on forever. These were the oracles, okay? And oracles died off, but cults survived, and we know about the cult of Isis, the cult of Dionysus, the cult of Demeter, the cult of Ishtar. These are all fertility goddesses, okay? And they were doing some very sexual rites. They call them rites. The mystery, the Eleusinian mysteries, Eleusinian, whatever, however you want to call it, the mysteries, right? And these mysteries involved these rights, these sex rights that had to do with drugs. Okay. Sex was a huge deal. Okay. Fertility and even the erection was a huge deal. There's a god called Priapus, and you can look up Priapus. And there's these paintings and statues of this god with a huge erection, like a fucking baby arm, huge erection. And it's the god of erection, you know, he was the god of erection. So if you look in Ethiopia, there's these megaliths, 1,000-ton stone statues of penises, huge stone statues of penises that, you know, they're just left there. There's a bunch of them, hundreds of them. Okay. So sex was a really, really big deal back in the day. Sex was a huge deal because it's creating life, you know? So even on the Egyptian, you know, temples and pyramids, you will see the lotus flower depicted on there. Okay. This lotus flower is the Egyptian blue lotus. It's a natural aphrodisiac. Okay. And it's known to have hallucinogenic properties, but also it's known to be an aphrodisiac for sex. So not only did it give you vision, it gave you erection. It made, you know what I mean? So they were using these drugs. They were using them. They were worshiping sex and vision. Okay. And these sex cults carry on to today. And they were also being carried out with Jesus. Okay. It's all over the Bible. The word pharmacology. Pharmakon comes from the Greek. Okay. The Bible was written in Greek. That word is all over the Bible. The word mystery, mysterion, mystery is all over the Bible. Okay. It was the Eleusinian mysteries were running wild back in the times of Jesus. People were heavily using drugs, and they called it the purple, right? You can look up these purple dyes. It was made from a snail, the seashell over in the Black Sea. It's a certain snail, and they would get this purple dye from it. But that purple dye was also a substance used to make these drugs. And it's crazy the more you dig into it. But I am not lying, people. I am not lying, right? These sex cults were everywhere. Just look up the Eleusinian mysteries, and then you can read the Dionysian, or what is the Orphic Vox. You can look up the Orphic Vox. All these tales of Dionysus, the Orphic Vox, all these things, they all are relatable to the Bible. And it's the same thing that they were doing. You know, this purple drug. Mary had purple fingers. It's a passage in the Bible, right? This purple was everywhere. It was traded on the Roman market. The Roman market was like this open market. They called it an agora in Greek. And agora, it's a marketplace. That's where everybody met up, right? And anything was for sale. If you could go there and just sell your things, right? So this became in high demand, these drugs. And these cults, the initiation, they would say, are you initiate? Are you an initiate, right? Like the satanic congregation can initiate you, right? You can be initiated into a cult. They were initiating people by giving them vision, by giving them drugs, right? And a lot of these were combined with sex. They were doing it with sex. I don't know if you know what a phallus is, but it's a dildo. They had dildos in antiquity, and they would use these phalluses, and they would put drugs on them. And what would they do? They would put them in their anus. You've heard of boofing, right? Putting drugs up your ass is something that has been happening since the ancient days, because they knew that, you know. It was more common than how people would take drugs today. You know, it's not like they had needles or sniff things as much. It was more, they figured out you could put things in the butt, right? So I'm just telling you, people, This stuff was happening. This stuff was happening in the Bible. Jesus was doing the same exact thing. He was giving people vision. All right. These cults were everywhere. And Christianity, Catholicism, this was just a cult that won. That was a cult that took over. It took over. It was powerful. Okay. Having these drugs were powerful as they are today, as drugs are powerful today. So, yeah, I just want you to do some research and realize how crazy antiquity was. And another reason why I'm bringing this up is because there are so many cures in these books. All right, so we have a physician named Galen. I did a video about Galen. He was the archphysician of Marcus Aurelius. Okay, so he wrote all about this. He wrote about the theriac. That's a known drug, the theriac. Okay, it was like this cure-all drug, but it also gave you that vision. It was even known to extend life, to make you look younger. They would say that Marcus Aurelius was looking younger when he was taking this. But it also Galen also wrote that he was like a huge junkie, right? This is the Roman emperor, right? So, but all the emperors of the time, all the big rulers of the time, they had personal physicians. And all these physicians left literature, people. We have a lot of literature, all in ancient Greek and Latin and all these things. And we have books, piles and piles of books of different drugs, right? And they were also using snake venom in a lot of these. That's why Jesus says you could pray with snakes and it won't hurt you. There was a lot of snake venom. And I did a video about the snake worship, the temples to the snake worship. They were using it as drugs, people. Drugs. It was all over antiquity. Okay? All over antiquity. And you could clearly see it in the language that they were using stuff. We know about them putting um different things in the beer, right? Like hemlock. Hemlock was known to be put in the Viking beer. That would make you trip, right? They were using the mushroom. They were using these drugs all over the world, and it would give you a healing experience. And that is what they started using as cults, because they started outruling drugs because too many people were walking around tripping balls, I guess, maybe. And maybe it shouldn't have been as free as it was. Who knows? Maybe it should have been, because maybe there was nothing wrong with it. But someone took control of the drugs, probably because of money and greed. So the people with the drug knowledge were the people running things and brainwashing people and getting people under their control. They were fumigating people. They were giving people these drugs. You know, they were doing all these crazy rituals, putting people in a death state and resurrecting them. That's where the resurrection story comes from with Jesus, people. This is not Jesus isn't the only God that died and resurrected. Dionysus was too, right? Egyptian gods did this, Osiris, all these. It was all about death and resurrection, because they would put you in a death state and then resurrect you out of it, sometimes for 3 days. Sometimes for 3 days. Right. Right. You know the story. You get what I'm going for. Okay. These sex cults carry on. And they were doing a lot of dirty things that aren't good, not good things, right? And it carries over in today's world. A lot of the evil people run these sex cults, and they're still going on today. You see them in the paper, right? And the Catholic Church was based on these sex cults. And if you don't believe me, why the hell do all the popes get caught doing bad things with young people, right? Yeah. So think about it. It's still going on. It's still going on. Religion is a very culty thing, and it all stems from these ancient cults that were using drugs, right? And getting vision. And people wanted this vision, right? But then it became you had to be an initiate to get this. Then it became a secret. Then it wasn't for everybody. So then people didn't realize what was going on. So then when someone put them into a drug trance, and then they think they see God, or they could be manipulated by the person giving them drugs, then you can control a whole society of people, right? Because you have a couple people that you've given these drugs to, and they believe, they see because they saw, because you gave them the drugs. And now you can convince them that You have the access to God and you gave it to them because they don't know what just happened to them, right? So now you can use it for control. These things have been going on for a long time, okay? And we need to get with our history and stop letting these cults brainwash people. These old sex cults, maybe the drugs aren't there so much anymore, but the rituals are still there, and the dirty things that happen with people and religions are still there. The people at the top of the religions touching people that they shouldn't, that's still there. And it was all over the cults of the Bronze Age. So that's my story. Now you know a little bit about sex cults and Jesus, my friends. That's right. That's right. Good old Jesus. Okay. And another thing is, go look up Mark 14:51. You will see Jesus. When Jesus was arrested, he was caught with a naked boy. That's not okay, people. But they just brush that off, right? Then they also give you this picture of Jesus at the Last Supper with a bunch of old men with beards. Like the apostles were old men with beards. There was one guy that was 30, one guy that was 19. The rest of them were like 13 years old. These were boys, people. These weren't grown old men with beard. They were not. Look it up, okay? Look it up. It's all in the language, this culty shit. You've been watching the DNAS channel? Come back for more.